Hey there. I don't know about you, but I've always hated the sound of my own voice, particularly when I was younger. I don't hate it anymore. As I got over that and let go of that smaller self that needs to nitpick every little detail about who I am. So today I want to ask you some questions and pose some things to you to pique your interest. So how would you like to learn about the 5 small voices that stifle your sacred voice? And what the heck is a sacred voice? Well, as you come into greater awareness and let go of the little self, the little part of you that likes to disparage and judge and criticize yourself and others, you come into higher consciousness, let's say, on particular topics. And when you start to do some spiritual work I particularly have come into quantum spiritual awakenings where I awakened into higher consciousness that brings down the veil of truth so that I can perceive things at a much higher spiritual level, as an example. And I've really come into awareness of the sacredness of my own voice, which I'm going to tell you a story about all of that. Super fascinating story, I have to tell you, that went on during a spiritual awakening. But I'll tell that at the end because I want to get to today's topic. So also, you're going to discover the art of hearing your own voice through resonance with music. And you may find there's particular music that you're really drawn to. And I know during this awakening there was only one band that I had resonance with, like in a very soul level way, it felt like. And we're also going to explore the musical cosmology and rouse your sacred voice for self-healing. And I've discovered quite a bit of self-healing in listening to my own podcast, which sounds kind of like narcissistic, egotistical type of thing, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like healing when I listen to my own. I have a podcast called Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness. And when I listen to that, I learn something. I feel at home. There's something about it that's really quite beautiful. So today, I'm going to introduce you to a free online event that's going to be available through December 15th of 2021. But what we're talking about today is also relevant in general because these events come around that I share, and there'll be links for them below the podcast. And if for some reason this is going to pass December 15th, but then when other things come along that are related to it, I'll share those in links below as well. So the event that's coming up is called Liberate the Sacred Powers of Your Own Voice with 2 gentlemen known as the Brothers Koren, and they have also been known as the Kin. Now, before I get into the details of the event and sharing more information about the Brothers Koren and this cool kind of quantum spiritual awakening story I have to share with you, my name is Liz Garcia, founder of the Mind, Body, Spirit Network, and I consciously create and curate content just like this to help you raise your level of consciousness on a wide variety of topics and be the change you wish to see in the world. You can find me on the podcast at highvibetriberadio.com or on the YouTube channel at highvibetribetv.com. So today, as promised, I want to introduce you to this notion of your sacred voice, the voice that you are brought into this world with. Really, I get it now that it's like your signature in spirit. So that which you are in spirit, God, divine creation, has a signature sound. And I've even experienced that as spirits, we have our own kind of signature light. Like there's a light. I literally saw this, and I'm clairvoyant, so I see images. And I was kind of shown this notion that we're a signature of light too. Just like your hand is a signature, in spirit, we have a signature of light, so to speak, and sound. So, let's talk about the Brothers Koren first, because they have quite an interesting background and resume, and I honestly had never heard of them before. But I have interviewed a woman who's really a pioneer in sound healing through the sacred voice. Her name is Chloe Goodchild, and I'll share her interview because she's fascinating as well. And she's been doing her work for quite a while, and she's been with the Shift Network for probably decades because and she comes around every year. She's super popular, and people are finding it helpful to kind of understand the notion of your voice as a healing and sacred instrument. So let's take a look at, I'm going to read here a little bit more about the Brothers Koren. And they've also been known, presumably their band was also known as the Kin, K-I-N. So they're two gentlemen named Isaac and Thorold Koren. And for you women out there, they are yummy eye candy. If nothing else, you might want to come on and listen to them, or, check in on the webinar that I'm going to introduce you to. You can sign up for below at any time. So they're super interesting. They're on a mission to hear the world's song one big voice at a time. And with over 20 years of experience recording, teaching, and empowering others through transformational leadership and touring the world as the Kin and the Brothers Koren, their work continues to grow and expand the space for creative expression, leading people toward a more embodied life. And it's kind of interesting to really stop and consider that, training your voice, especially if you want to be a speaker, a presenter, or someone who leads, to kind of find your own voice in this way, kind of attuned to the true, like the power of the signature voice that you are in spirit. It's kind of a phenomenal notion to really let that sink in. It's not some woo-woo, right? We are spirit, really. And I talk about this in my other podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness. Spirit is of higher consciousness than our little, personality selves, which is not to demean who we are in personality, but the greater part of us in spirit is vast. So here's some really interesting something to consider, that these brothers, over the course of their musical careers, have performed live on Conan. They've earned a gold record and performed for over 1 million people while touring with really popular bands like Coldplay, Pink, Rod Stewart, and Bon Jovi. I mean, that's pretty huge. So today their mission has shifted to one that seeks to include many voices as they listen and study the transformative effect of voice and music on human well-being. Again, I feel healing resonance when I listen or watch my own YouTube. I listen to the podcast in the car, and I watch on YouTube because I'm seeing light, an expression that kind of is coming. I understand it's coming from a higher source, greater spirit. So through the development of, they have some programs they've developed. The one of them is the Songwriter's Journey. They're your big voice programs. The Brothers Koren are helping thousands reclaim their voices and the stories and songs that have lain dormant, unearthing big voices from all walks of life and from all around the world. They have worked with Fortune 500 companies, presented at TEDx, are faculty at the Exponential Medicine Conference, and are musical directors for the Association of Transformational Leaders, as well as faculty members, for the Shift Network, which is who is putting on this production. So if you're thinking of speaking or singing or performing or doing TEDx's, leading networking groups, this could be a great webinar to really take it to the next level and understanding of the sacredness and healing power of your own voice when you let go of what they call the five small voices that stifle your sacred voice. It's kind of funny. All right, so I'm going to read a little about the upcoming event, which is good through December 15th, 2021, and then the course will start. But the initial kind of introductory webinar is free for everyone. So I would highly recommend, if you're interested, just to sign up for that and check it out. But I'm going to read you what this event is going to include, and I'm going to kind of put my insights into sound healing and my experience at higher levels, kind of higher consciousness perceptions that were brought to me, maybe for this particular reason, to share with you. And I have a great story, again, that I'm going to share at the end that really today came to me as a story because it's really relevant and fun to share. So let's talk about the event first. So I'm going to do some reading here. So pardon me that I did not memorize this whole thing. I haven't quite learned that craft. So again, the name of this event is called Liberate the Sacred Power of Your Own Voice with the Brothers Koren. Music meets you where you are on your journey to heal, validate, and inspire. And oftentimes bring a little disruption to your comfort zone to remind you of the gift of change and help you awaken to the greater possibilities for your life. So here's an interesting thing to consider. I create a weekly post called High Vibe Song of the Week. And I'm also a teacher of consciousness. So every song has a particular energy. Any type of music has a particular energy, and you can hopefully accept that when you take a look at like gangster rap, heavy metal versus love songs. There's a different energy to them. And every week I share a different song. Typically I only share music that's of high vibe. So anything above 200 on the map of consciousness is considered high vibe. And it doesn't matter how high it is on the map because all levels serve where you are at. And I've noticed it's kind of interesting that music in the 200s is typically popular, really popular music like Michael Jackson or, poppy stuff that's fun. You want to dance to it. There's no love songs will tend to be up in the 500s as a contrast. So an example of someone who sings songs in the 500s would be like Celine Dion, the Bee Gees. Surprisingly, I was in love with the Bee Gees growing up. All of their music is in the 500s, which is the land of love. So it's interesting to understand this. And when I read this, music meets you where you are on your journey to heal, validate, and inspire. So when I first started to enter this quantum spiritual awakening, I was separating from my husband and moved across the country to kind of like heal among family and friends. And at the time, the music that came to me really strongly was the music of India Ari and Train's album Drops of Jupiter. And I'm going to share stories about the music of Train and Drops of Jupiter because it's really relevant to what they're saying here. When they're saying the music comes to meet and inspire and validate you on your journey, they were clearly like soul intended music for me to connect with. So as you open to receive the sacred medicine of music through your own singing voice, the melodies receive you as well. This connection adds new layers of aliveness and dimension to your entire being, amplifying music's capacity to hold you and others in healing where it is needed most. And I can say that at higher levels of consciousness, like if you enter into an awakening like I have, though mine was quantum in nature, which is rare, that I'm willing to accept it's rare and share that with you. You don't need to go into a quantum spiritual awakening to have music kind of amplify that, but music did amplify it for me. The healing, the inspiration, the joy, inner joy and glory. So transformational voice teachers Isaac and Thorold Koren of the Brothers Koren refer to this unique give and take relationship with music as your musical cosmology. So when you're kind of entering higher realms of awareness like I have, you can feel that it's like a soul, purposeful soul thing that you're connected to the music at a soul level. It's a meaningful kind of signature sound that is highly resonant with who you are at a spirit level at this particular point in time. I mean, as infinite beings, we can, morph into other things, likely. So as the brothers teach, every living being is cosmically designed to receive and respond to specific sounds that resonate not only with their physiological design, but their divine life plan and life experience as well. The Brothers Koren will help you discover new ways to rouse your sacred self to the forefront of all that you do through the power of your own voice. And I can only attest to the truth of what I've experienced in regards to this. So let me just go deeper into what this event is going to entail. So this is a 60-minute free online event where you're going to experience a deeply personal musical performance by the Brothers Koren, exploring the power of voice to help you receive, express, and heal. You're going to explore your musical cosmology to arouse your sacred voice to the surface for deepened self-healing, self-awareness, and the joy of being alive. I can tell you, when you awaken inner joy, you're not in Kansas anymore. So I did experience these songs connecting to me at a very deep level at the time, India RE and Train, the Drops of Jupiter CD in particular, really brought me into a deepening awareness and joy of being alive. I experienced inner joy coming from me, awakening up from me. You're going to be guided in a healing vocal exercise, so there'll be some participation that you can actually kind of integrate into your own awareness. This healing vocal exercise that'll welcome you into your whole body instrument, where you can begin to hear, receive, and express your voice as an extension of home. Your spiritual home, I would guess, the deeper part of you, home. You're going to discover the 5 small voices that stifle your sacred voice. I would think one of them is like hating the sound of your own voice. It's like, get over that one. That's a lower mind, lower consciousness, kind of poor me, I hate my voice. Get rid of that. Let it go. And you're also going to discover how the music that moves you mirrors you, and how the simple act of listening and receiving can open you to your truth and create ripples of healing and positive change. So this is an interesting thing. You're going to discover a music that moves you and mirrors you, meaning how are you feeling? And when you understand levels of consciousness of different music, you can look at the energy of the music to see what the feeling is. And as an example of this, even though I teach higher consciousness and I love, high vibe music, all levels, anything above 200, I love most music. Country music's like in the 300s. The Eagles are in the 300s. The 400s is like, who's in the 400s? I forget. Anyway, there's a lot of well-known artists in the 400s, and the 500s I already shared with you. 600s and 700s is like classical music. That's where the real high vibe is. And you don't have to like classical music. There's other things you can listen to that serve their own purpose. But I happen to love AC/DC's Highway to Hell, which is quite a contrast to higher consciousness. But if you look at the energy of Highway to Hell or AC/DC in general, it's really resonant with the angry side of me. Angry, bitter, arrogant. It's kind of like that energy. And I just love to dance to it. So I'm thinking, what's it mirroring? What's the music mirroring? It's mirroring perhaps in me that I still got a lot of anger running, possibly. And I do listen to it less and less and less, but I do occasionally like to crank it up in my car and because it gets my blood boiling, which is a good sign of lower mind, lower consciousness. Anger, which is not to judge or disparage you. It's helping you to see what music is mirroring. So what are you listening to? It's a mirroring, of what's going on within you. And occasionally I like to blast a little Highway to Hell, AC/DC, Back in Black, love them all. I just don't listen to them as much anymore because I understand the energy of them. So in this soul igniting hour, I promise you it's a soul igniting hour. That's what we're doing. We're connecting with the true essence and resonance of us in spirit. We all have a unique signature sound, light frequency, energy frequency. So in this soul igniting hour, you'll discover how the simple act of listening to, receiving, and expressing the depths of your own voice creates ripples of healing and positive change throughout your life. So the invitation is to join these hotties, the Brothers Koren, for this unique experiential event for awakening your whole body instrument through the power of your own voice for deepened self-healing, connection, soul resonance, and the return home of your authentic, wondrous self. So if you want to attend this event or watch the recording of it, there's links to it below the video and the podcast. And then they'll come around again because I noticed people were really interested in last time they came around. So they might come around twice a year. So when and if they do, I'll provide different links so that you can get to something current. And then there's other related kind of sound healing events that I'll share as well. So you have options now that you're listening to this and you're getting interested in kind of sound healing, really is what it is, but the sacred sound of your voice. So I will share some courses that you could take from Chloe Goodchild, and if her events come around, we'll be keeping the links updated as best I can so that there's something for you to kind of go forward with. So I really wanted to share a story about this quantum spiritual awakening I had back in 2003. But before I go there, I want to share, this is the first part. It must have been 10 or 15 years prior to 2003, would be like the mid-90s. I was walking to work, and I lived in Cambridgeport, Massachusetts at the time. And I was walking to work. I had a store called Sweet Peace Home on Newbury Street in Boston, and then I moved it to Clarendon Street. It's in the Back Bay of Boston, which is like the primo shopping district. So I had I always wanted to live and work in Boston, so I created my own business. So I could walk to work from where I lived in Cambridgeport, and it would be walking over the BU Bridge in the morning, where I could see all the crewers, doing the crew, the rowing is crew from Harvard, MIT, BU, all the crewers are out there like at 7 in the morning. And at the time I had a Sony Walkman, which is dating me for sure. So a Sony Walkman was this yellow portable radio with headphones, and I was listening to the radio at the time because you couldn't have your own CDs, your own music on a Sony Walkman at that time. And back then I was pretty, practically minded. I wasn't really interested in anything what I would consider as woo-woo. I'd be judgmental about angel healers and psychics and that type of thing. I consider it kind of like woo-woo. So I'm walking over the bridge one morning where, you walk over the BU Bridge, walk through, this is kind of a fun walk through the BU campus, walk through Kenmore Square, the Red Sox baseball stadium is right there, and then down Commonwealth Ave into the Back Bay of Boston. So anyone from New England, if you haven't been to Boston, it's well worth the visit. So anyway, I'm walking over the BU Bridge one morning, and for the very first time, I hear a song called Drops of Jupiter by Train. And it's super popular now. This is over 20 years ago, right? At least 20, more than 20 years ago, right? 20, 30, maybe 30 years ago, I heard Drops. I don't know how old it is. I should have looked it up. I hear Drops of Jupiter for the first time. And as I'm listening to the lyrics of the song, which I should have pulled up here, let me grab them for you. So I'm going to read some of the lyrics, not all of them, but some of them, because this is, when I heard this, now, and remember, I've never heard this song before. I've got the Sony Walkman on my head. I'm going over the BU Bridge in the Charles River. You know, it's crossing the Charles River in Cambridge. And I hear this. Now that she's back in the atmosphere, with drops of Jupiter in her hair, she acts like summer and walks like rain, reminds me that there's time to change. Since the return of her stay on the moon, she listens like spring and she talks like June. So that's essentially, and then the chorus is, but tell me, did you sail across the sun? Did you make it to the Milky Way to see the lights all faded and that heaven is overrated? And tell me, did you fall from a shooting star, one without a permanent scar? And did you miss me while you were looking for yourself out there? So as I'm listening to this song, I can feel deep within me a resonance and a recognition. And again, I'm not a woo-woo type. I'm more practically minded. But I'm also apparently highly intuitive. Rumor has it. I never really recognized it in myself because it was kind of just innate to me. I didn't know what it was until other spiritual healers and advisors like, Liz, you're highly intuitive. Anyway, I'm listening to the words of the song and I'm feeling what the Brothers Koren are describing. This deep kind of resonance and kind of at a deeper level. And I knew right then and there that I am not of this world in spirit, right? None of us are of this world in spirit, but I felt like I was celestial in nature, which is what they're talking about. They're speaking of this in the song. Now that she's back from the atmosphere, drops of Jupiter in her hair, I felt like that is my true home, as weird as it may have sounded. And I didn't even question or judge myself. I just knew the truth of it at some level. And I came across this book called, way down the line, this is like 20 years later, I was introduced to this book called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers, which is a fantastic book. I did an entire podcast and video cast on the afterlife of Billy Fingers in my other podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness, because it's such an interesting story. So it's a true story about the afterlife of this guy named Billy Fingers who comes back and speaks to his sister who wrote the book, because he's telling her what he's experiencing in the afterlife, which is pretty fascinating. But he is describing exactly what that, pretty much, not exactly, but he's describing celestial nature and becoming the universe. He describes becoming the universe. And as I'm listening to it, I'm understanding that's the truth of my particular spiritual path at the moment. Like I could feel it. And I don't have to justify it or rationalize it or even speak it to anyone else. You just feel the truth of it. And that was it. So that was sometime in the 90s is my guess on the date of that. And then I mentioned, and I share this on my other podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness, I share the story of a quantum spiritual awakening that I had in 2003. And in 2003, during this, I started to awaken to higher levels of consciousness, which I didn't know what it was. I just knew that I started to burst like kind of a roller coaster. I'd come up into these high states of awakened inner joy, which is completely, it's a super high level of consciousness most of us are not aware of because it's not of this world in general. So I'd come into this like inner joy, and I'd awakened senses in me like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, where you're really starting to feel and communicate in other ways besides hearing and seeing. You're like hearing spirit speak to you. You're seeing visions from spirit. And at the time, during this awakening, the entire Train album, every single song was meaningful, as if they, at spirit level, wrote this particular album just for me. That's how freaking strong and resonant it was. And it was almost frightening that each song had meaning and purpose and connection. Like, holy crap, Amazing Grace is coming through this song. And I had this evening of heightened awareness where I'm dancing. You know, I was on Nantucket Island at the time, and I think it was the fall. But the song "Calling All Angels" really like lit me up, like huge, lit me up. And the energy of the angelic realms is 500 above on the map of consciousness, which is a whole other topic we're not going to go into today. But super high frequency, the angelic realm. And as I'm dancing around the room, enjoying the song, I can sense kind of in my third eye that I'm surrounded by angels. It's like a circle of angels all around me. So this quantum spiritual awakening that I had was a super highs and super lows. So intense that I came into a nervous breakdown because it was way too much for my system to handle, my psyche to handle, the whole 9 yards. Quantum in nature. And I remember many years after this experience, I had episodes of quantum awakenings and confrontation. You know, I don't want to go into what they are exactly, but for 10 years, I'd have them, you know, twice a year. Then it went down to one time a year. And now there's none of it going on right now because I've come into balance. I'm not doing the swing anymore. But in regards to music, super interesting. I told you that there was a super soul resonance for me. The whole album, Drops to Jupiter by Train. So was India Ari's album at the time too. It really moved me. But Train, I felt like, holy crow, they wrote this album for me to experience it at a higher level, at a soul level. It's not to be like, I'm sure many people have resonance with Train and the songs that they sing. So I'm sharing a story with a friend of mine over the phone about this quantum spiritual awakening. And I'm talking to him about this resonance I had with Train, the music in general. And as we're speaking and I'm sharing the story, I hear in the background Train say, "Hey, soul sister," like highly synchronistic, right on cue as I'm speaking, the resonance I felt. The soul, "Hey, soul sister" is a Train song. The line, "Hey, soul sister," I heard clearly. And then the rest of it just faded in the background as I'm speaking to my friend. So pretty huge. I didn't share that with him, but I'm like, holy crap, that's amazing. So back to the Brothers Koren. They're onto something really interesting here. And again, if you're into, you hope to be a speaker, a leader, presenter at TEDx, a lecturer, an actor or actress, a singer for sure, it'd be super helpful to connect with this higher level self, this higher level signature sound and frequency of your own sacred voice. And again, before I really thought about the sound of my voice as healing, I would go back and listen to my weekly dose of higher consciousness podcasts and videocasts. And I'd listen to them at night before I go to bed because they provided some type of healing grace for me. I don't know how else to explain it. It wasn't that I was caught up in the, in a narcissistic way with it. It just felt good to me. And then I made the connection. It must be this sacred sound of my own voice is helping me here. So again, let's share the name of this event again. is called Awakened. Hold on. Liberate the sacred power of your own voice with the Brothers Koren. There's a free online event, and then you can sign up for their course if you want. And just so you know, I am an affiliate of the Shift Network, who are the creators of this event and all of the online courses. And if you do end up buying the course, we will earn a commission. Or if you buy anything from the Shift Network from a link that we share with you, we'll earn a commission for this, which is not the reason, necessarily the reason I'm sharing this. The purpose of the Mind, Body, Spirit Network is to consciously curate content like this and online courses that are of higher consciousness that can actually shift you in positive, affirmative, life-affirming ways. And this is just how we support this, we earn commissions, and they help support all that we do in creating podcasts and videocasts. So that's it for today. Again, my name is Liz Garcia. I'm your happy host at highvibetriberadio.com on the podcast and highvibetribetv.com on the YouTube channel. If you like what's going on here, we'd love for you to share it with your family and friends, because I'm on a mission to help raise the level of consciousness of the world, one sacred voice at a time. Stay tuned for some more goodies coming up later this week.